Boom, boom. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new live episode of Climate Curious, presented by the Solutions Project. I'm Shanae Watkins of Agency of Joy, and I'm your host. Joining me is our ASL interpreter, Rory Burton. Today, we're talking money, community power. Today we're talking money, utility power, and community respect. Shout out to the locks. But before we jump into today's show and bring out our guests, I just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in, who streamed, and who shared last week's episode. We had over 120,000 viewers tuning in from over 45 countries. And I'm just truly grateful for you all. You know, we're really sharing a conversation and it takes you all tuning in. So just thank you. But let's keep that knowledge and all that fun going today with the comments. As you all know, the focus of this show is real talk about climate change. You know, and we don't take that lightly at all. To get to the solutions, we have to talk about the actual problems. And so in the show, we get serious, but we also have some fun and joy along the way because joy is paramount to us making it through. And as you know, we're live, streaming to you live. So just want to take some time out to thank everyone who's streaming from our partners' Facebook pages. Thank you so much, Now This, for sharing. Later in the show, we're going to have a question and answer segment for our guests. So please be sure to send in all your questions in the comments or to join the conversation on social media using the hashtag ClimateCurious. Now, let's get into the show. So our first guest today is an activist and a creative who likes to solve problems by exploring the connection of issues to really understand how they connect with one another. She's also the Just Energy Director for Partnership for Southern Equity, which is an organization based in Atlanta that works to promote policies and actions that affect racial equity and prosperity for all. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Chandra Farley. Hey, Chandra.
Hey, Sean.
How you doing?
You. I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good. It's so glad to have you. Thank you for joining. All right, y'all. Our next guest is also a social entrepreneur and a former White House official, keyword former, with rural roots in Georgia. She's a relentless agent for change with a passion for connecting economic growth and clean energy. She's also the CEO of Groundswell, which is an organization that's building community power using community solar. Everyone, join me in welcoming Michelle Moore. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing?
Lovely. Thank you so much. Grateful to be here with y'all today.
Yeah, same. It's so nice seeing y'all. I'm so happy to have you join us today. Thank you so much for joining Climate Curious. So we're going to just jump right into it. Our first segment of the day is the news of the week, except this week, we're going to do things a little different. We're actually going to look at a tweet of the week because I don't know about you all, but I know that I wake up to Twitter as my newspaper. And so yesterday, Grist, the media environmental company, tweeted, "The Empire State announced a slate of grants totaling more than $10.6 million to help underserved residents access affordable solar energy," which to me looks great. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I want to talk to you all, Michelle and Chandra. What are your thoughts? Is this good news? Michelle, I'll start with you.
I'd say it's a good start. And I want to first say that for Eddie Bautista and for all the environmental justice and climate justice activists who won this fight, congratulations for them, powerful victory. But when we think about how much money gets spent, even just on climate advocacy in the US, it's a $500 million a year industry. So I'm looking forward to seeing the next 10 million and the next 10 million and the next 10 million being invested in communities.
Yes, love that, love that. And Chandra, what are your takes? Have you seen something like this happen already in Georgia or in the South?
No. When I see things like this, I am, state action dreams for sure. And, to Michelle's point, yes, this is a strong start for somewhere like Georgia, where there is no funding mechanism for a lot of the things that we talk about relative to making sure the benefits of clean, renewable energy extend to communities who are most impacted. A lot of things we talk about, when there's no funding mechanism to move those things forward, or no state legislation to protect those kinds of actions and spur the markets and the sectors that are needed to drive further action around those things. We're pretty far behind here in my current home state, but actions like New York specifically, Michelle mentioned Eddie Bautista, and I think about our friends at We Act for Environmental Justice, and even in Virginia with their really landmark legislation that they passed earlier this year. Lots of things to look up to.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's amazing to hear, right? We need to kind of keep seeing more of those streamlights to achieve towards. So in the article, the author, Rachel Ramirez, she goes into talking about these grants that, essentially is going to help offset pre-development costs. Michelle, I know you work a lot, with solar energy as well. And so I wonder, what does that actually mean?
So when you're building a solar project, especially when it's infrastructure, right? It's going maybe on the ground in an empty lot. It's going on top of a building. It's going over a parking garage. And so when you're trying to build projects, you run into the legacy of redlining, for instance. So trying to get solar projects into communities that have been targeted, by racial discrimination for, tens and hundreds of years, that have been disadvantaged by practices like redlining, it means that you may have to fix the roof before you can put a solar panel on top. It may mean that you have to upgrade your connection to the utility, to the power lines to be able to use solar power. And so pre-development money, helps you put the time, energy, and sometimes investment into the physical improvements that are needed before you really have the ability, to engage and use solar and deploy clean energy in your own neighborhood.
I see. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. And Chandra, and Michelle, you mentioned redlining. Chandra, I wonder, what is redlining to you? I hear that word kind of a lot thrown up, and sometimes I struggle to actually know, what does that mean, especially in this context?
So redlining was racist federal practice. So essentially, it was federal lending policy to move Black people, people of color, into quote unquote less desirable areas of cities and urban centers relative to development. So when you hear about redlining, you may also hear about white flight. And the conditions that were created really, after soldiers returning home from World War II, well, a lot of white soldiers were given loans and things like that to buy homes. And, we see the advent of the suburbs, whereas Black people, people of color were relegated and oftentimes ended up stuck in urban centers that weren't receiving the same types of investment. And when we think about loans and mortgages, those are generational practices. So 30 years, 40 years that we're still feeling the impacts of today, which is why we can point to race as the number one indicator for things like the siting of toxic waste facilities, or 60 to 70% of Black people and people of color living within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant. All things we know that not only reduce property values, but have stunted the growth of generational wealth in Black communities and communities of color, and many of the disinvestments, disproportionate health impacts that have been amplified during COVID. You can all trace back to racist federal policy like redlining.
You really drew a picture that really connected that. I didn't realize how how interconnected, like you were saying, that this redlining practice takes place. And you mentioned coal power plants. I know that when the current sitting president took office, there was a lot of talk around the Paris Agreement and kind of ending coal. What is, from your take, what's the situation right now with coal in America? And as you said, with Black and brown communities living so close to them.
So I would say coal plants are definitely being retired. I think at strong rates across the nation. I think what happens is, I think the quote unquote rub can be what we're replacing them with, and the situation of and the Paris Agreement in particular, I think really generated a really exciting movement for a lot of the progressions to adopting 100% clean energy policy, was really driven by mayors, saying, no, we know that climate change is real. We know we need to do something about it, and we can make these things happen in our cities, in partnerships with our own utilities. And so, then when we also look at the issue of, a coal-fired power plant, what we see is, I think, the advent of moving to fracked gas instead of beefing up that really investment that needs more and more behind it in renewables like solar, wind, those types of things.
Got it. All right. Well, thank y'all so. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I could add, to Chandra's thoughts, you kicked us off by really talking about money and power, in climate and energy. And part of the reason that, that $10 million in New York is a good start is we also think about, how is building, all those clean energy projects, all those solar and wind turbines that are going to replace coal-fired power plants and one day natural gas turbines as well. How is that really fulfilling the promise of green for all? Who is getting wealthy, right? Who is getting wealthy on a 1,000-acre solar farm? And it's good, to get a little solar power on your roof for your house, or for your apartment building, but it's better when all this investment in new energy infrastructure is lifting more people into prosperity and into real wealth building opportunities. And just to go a tiny bit deeper for a second, all those, another reason that $10 million is important is because the most important incentive, in terms of dollar values for building renewable energy, so for building solar or wind, is a tax credit. It's worth 30% of the value of a project. So that's $300,000 of value on $1 million solar project. Well, you can't use tax credits unless you're already rich. You have to pay a lot of taxes to use a tax credit. So basically, the incentive structure for renewables is making the rich richer. That's the incentive structure. And I love me some solar panels. I love building some solar panels, but as we're, defining our energy futures, God willing, have a shot at some new policy come November in how the federal government is creating a national future for us around clean energy. We have got to do better, looking at the systems of money and power and the way wealth is built on this new type of energy infrastructure. Because I'll tell y'all right now, currently we're just replicating the same racial and gender disparities of the past as we build this clean energy future. That's where we are, and we got to do better.
Well, Michelle, you kicked us off to a great seg point. We're going to do more right into that in our next segment, Real Talk. But everyone, just please send in your questions. What are your thoughts? What do you think about this $10 million announcement? Are you living in a New York City development that will be receiving clean solar energy? Let us know in the comments using the hashtag #ClimateCurious. But up next, we're going to kick it over to our next segment, Real Talk. All right. Sorry. I got a little caught up there. Y'all, so have you ever wondered where your dollars go when you're like paying your utility bills or your gas bill, your electric bill? Or look, let's be real. Have you ever had to fight a utility power company to get your power cut back on? I know what that's like. Or maybe you've just wondered how to get your clean energy or solar panels on your roof to lower those bills. Well, don't worry, because today we're in luck, because we're talking, as the song said, money, power, and respect, except we're taking it a little differently: money, utility power, and community respect, inspired by the song that was just played in the segment by The Locks. And we're talking again with Michelle Moore, CEO of Groundswell, and Chandra Farley, Just Energy Director of Partnership for Southern Equity. Okay, so my first question, we're still in quarantine here. It's been a pandemic since March, and a lot of national conversations I've been seeing have been around utility shutoffs. My first question is for you, Chandra. What does that mean, and why do we see folks like PSC, groups like PSC, joining a wave for a national moratorium against utility shutoffs?
So utilities are basic necessities, first of all, energy, water, or power, water, even broadband now when we talk about access to the internet. So what we have seen, the impacts of COVID, the greatest employment, since the Great Depression. There was an article in the Times a couple of weeks ago that less than half of all Black adults have a job right now. 1 in 4 people are unemployed. And really, this is a continuation of the conversation around energy burden, which is, the portion of someone's household income that they put towards their utility bills. And we know that low income folks, relative to the, federal poverty guidelines, already spend almost 2.5 times more on their utility costs as someone in a white or higher income household. So as COVID started, more people losing their jobs. We know only a small, I think it was something like 25 to 30% of folks even were able to work from home. So as people were losing their livelihoods, not just being able to go to work, but some folks whose jobs were not coming back, it was critical that national action be taken to protect people's access to power, to water, and broadband.
Got it. I see. That makes total sense. And so, Michelle, then my next question for you is, how is these utility companies connected to climate change?
Well, to the theme, a lot of it comes back to money and power. The big public utility companies, they're usually called IOUs, investor-owned utilities. They have a monopoly. So in a lot of states, like in Georgia, the utility is the only place you can buy your electricity. It's illegal, for third parties to sell power. So you don't have a choice as a consumer. You got no choice. But those utilities exist, to enrich their shareholders. So again, it can pit the customer, who has given the utility the right to be a monopoly, to be the only company that can sell power to an entire state in some cases. But then, the utility is putting their shareholder interest, is putting the stock market above the people they're supposed to serve. When public is in the name public utility for a reason. And those big utilities, those are the companies that buy power. They're the ones who choose natural gas, or they choose coal, or they choose solar or wind. So they hold a lot of power, in the purchasing decisions that they make, and in the way that they treat their customers, and whether they shut people off or not. And they have a lot of responsibility that many, including Georgia Power in the state of Georgia, are not living up to.
Got it. And so, Chandra, you're in Georgia, you're based in the Atlanta area, and you work again with the partnerships and the equity. I'm wondering, in your work, can you talk to us a little bit about what are the conversations that you're having with community residents about where power is coming from, and the ways that folks can organize?
Yeah, definitely. So These are, even though we can't survive without energy or electricity, it's not present in our minds. You know, we flip on a light switch, you know, we plug in our phones, but we don't often think about where that opportunity is coming from. So Partnership for Southern Equity as an organization, our the way we do our work is all about making sure that people are positioned to create the solutions that are best for their community. So we have organizers that work on the ground across the state, really just with like information. And so for a lot of our community events, sometimes my first couple of questions may be, you know, I'll say, raise your hand if you thought about raise your hand if you had to plug in your phone to charge it this morning. Everybody's hand will go up. I'll say, raise your hand if you've ever struggled to pay a utility bill or any other bill. Most of the hands in the room will go up. And then I'll say, raise your hand if you thought about where the energy came from to plug in your phone or power your phone came from. Almost no hands go up unless it's like our staff or our partners or whatever. And then, you know, we say those two things are connected. Where our energy comes from, as Michelle said, who is making the decisions about what types of energy that is, all impact our pocketbooks. If I can reference my great grandmother, our purse, our wallet. And it's really, I didn't know about the Public Service Commission before I started working in this space, you know, 10 years ago. Of course, I'm from Tennessee, where the Tennessee Valley Authority, you know, is federally appointed. But coming to Georgia, we have a Public Service Commission that is elected. So there's about 11 states across the nation who have, some of them are appointed by governors, but here in Georgia, fortunately, unfortunately, they are elected. So we really connect the civic engagement process, particularly the importance of being an informed voter, particularly in those down ballot local races where you'll find public service commissioners, to make sure people understand that you have the power to make sure these people are doing a good job and making sure these people are working for you, really trying to put the public service back in the Public Service Commission. So as Michelle mentioned, that is directly related to investor-owned utilities. So for Georgia, that is Georgia Power. But we also have electric membership cooperatives. And so Georgia has about 42 electric membership cooperatives, and they are just what you think they are. They are membership-based cooperatives. So when you talk to someone who is served by an EMC, they are essentially a part owner of that utility. They're not just ratepayers, they are member owners. So they should also be wielding their democratic and civic power to run for the boards of these utilities. And particularly in the South, there's been a lot of intentional disenfranchisement through the legacy of boards. And, you know, people staying on boards forever or passing on their board seat to a relative. So it's really important that we understand how to connect the energy planning and decision making to our ability to build community power, and then wield that community power to make sure decisions are being made in our best interests.
Got that. That's not the work that you're doing.
I think to me,
Oh, go ahead, Michelle. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, there's a little delay. I was just going to say, like, kind of giving a big amen to everything that Chandra just said. You know, the bottom line is that if you want to make sure the public stays in public utility, get out and vote. Vote for those down ballot races. Know if it's an appointed seat and your governor is appointing them, and get out and vote for the board. If you're in a rural utility territory, get out and vote for your city councilman if you've got a municipal utility, because that is the greatest authority that you have.
Wealth of knowledge. And now I'm excited because we're about to jump into our Q&A segment, and we're seeing a lot of comments come in about what you all are talking about. So come up next, you all send your questions in the comments using the hashtag #ClimateCurious. And up next is our question and answer with Michelle and Chandra. And we're back. And now it's our question and answer time. So we have a question coming in from Tony Michelle. What exactly is community solar? Michelle, I'll kick it to you first.
Okay. Community solar is shared solar. So, if you rent the place that you live, if you don't have a rooftop that works for solar, if you don't want, to pay the upfront cost of putting solar on your roof, you can get community solar from a local solar installation. So maybe it's a solar project on the roof of a church. Maybe it's a solar project on the roof of your apartment complex. And so you can subscribe, to solar energy from that project that's just sort of over there, the same way that you can subscribe to, a subscription from Spotify. So it's a really convenient way to be able to make sure that your home is powered with solar, and to do it in a way that's keeping investment in the neighborhood.
Yo, that's amazing. And so if I hear correctly, what you're saying, community solar is essentially, even if I rent my apartment, like I don't own, I can still get community solar. Oh, that's awesome. Y'all, look at that.
Absolutely.
Look. And now how can folks get connected with the kind of community solar that you're doing work with at Groundswell?
So, like so many things in energy, it depends on what state you live in. Some states have community solar, some states don't. But I will say that for anybody in Washington, D.C. who's listening or watching today, we actually have 28 free community solar subscriptions available. Like, thanks to Washington, D.C. and their Solar for All program, we've got 28 spots for people who are income qualified. So basically, if you're single in Washington, D.C. and you're earning less than $65,000 a year, you can get $500 a year in free solar. So just hit us up. We got 28 spots.
Love that. Love that. And Chandra, what about you? So you're again in Georgia. Do you see community solar? I saw your hand raised. Was that saying that you all don't have community solar?
Not in the manner, of what Michelle is speaking of. And this really, again, goes back to the importance of understanding that public service commission. In some states, it's called a public utility commission. They make those decisions. So Georgia is actually, I think, now a top 11 state for solar, but that's due to utility scale. So like big solar farms in rural areas that support the economic development of those communities. But when we're talking about community solar opportunities that Michelle is talking about, we really don't have that in Georgia. And sort of the pilot that we do have, it's almost punitive. So instead of getting a bill discount, it's almost like our utility is saying, well, hey, if you can afford an extra $25, then hey, give us this $25 and you can buy into this solar farm, 100 miles away or outside of Atlanta, but you're not guaranteed any credit on your bill. You're really just sort of supporting a monopoly utility who makes billions of dollars to develop more solar. So definitely what the kinds of things that we advocate for specifically when talking about community solar is more neighborhood sited community solar, or community sited community solar, where Michelle is talking about where people can access that from a church in their community or a field, in their community.
Got it. And I just want to make sure that a question came in before as well, that I think really applies here. So you were talking about this commission, and so Public Service Commission. How can folks get involved, or what are if folks do get involved, what are the kind of laws that need to happen to see that type of change?
So I think you can Google, like put in your state and maybe Google your state plus public utility, and it will tell you, whether you have a Public Service Commission or a Public Utility Commission. All the proceedings should be public. They should happen on regular schedules, just like any other public, elected sort of regulatory body like your city council meetings. So I think just first understanding them, get to know your commissioners, get to know who they are, make sure they know you, go to meetings. One of the things that we did as a part of our community education around the regulatory process over the course of 2019 was just number one, we created a one-pager. Like, here is what the Public Service Commission is. We put all their pictures on the back. We put their districts on the back and their phone numbers. Just get to know them. And then the second thing was that we brought out close to 100 folks, a lot of who had never even heard of the Public Service Commission before this process, come out and make public comment. So every time they're going to make a decision about anything, there is generally or should be a public comment component of that. And it is important to understand when those opportunities are and making sure that they know you are there watching them. And I think on a third, for support, Google who your environmental justice organizations are in your community or in your state. They are guaranteed to be working in partnership or directly themselves on issues related to utilities. And that's a great sort of entry point to get connected to folks who may be more familiar with these issues and can help sort of give you an on-ramp, if you will, to be engaged in these processes.
I love that. Thank you so much for that answer. You also make sure that if you didn't hear, get involved. Find those meetings. We're all quarantined, so it's a little virtual. So if you join a meeting, maybe take a photo and tag it with Climate Curious. Let us know how you are encouraging your public commissioners to take action. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for your spot on answers. Now we're going to get into a little bit of fun. So up next is our rapid fire segment. We'll be right back, y'all. Woo! We back. Hey, Rory, thanks again. Just want to shout out Rory. We're in our ASL interpreter who is doing a fabulous job, and we just appreciate you so much for helping provide accessibility needs for all. All right, so now that it's time for a rapid fire, here's quick instructions. I'll read out some questions. You guys will have a quick time to give 1 or 2 word answer, and then we're going to keep it going. All right. So each one, I'm going to ask a question for both of you. You can answer both. So favorite emoji. Michelle, I'll start with you.
The one with that's like little square teeth.
Okay, yes, I know that one. Love. Chandra?
The head exploding one.
Tease. That's 2020, isn't it?
I've been using that one a lot.
Mm-hmm. I can relate. Okay, Chandra, favorite heroine, fact or fiction?
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. Michelle?
I would have to say Wonder Woman as well. She's a badass. Love her.
Sure is. Yes, we love. Okay, a song that brings you joy, Chandra.
Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
Wait, is it
Tears for
Ariana
Fears?
Grande?
No, Tears for Fears.
Ooh.
Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
Okay, I gotta be put on. Okay, yes. Michelle,
80s.
How about you?
Yeah.
Michelle, you there?
Oh, I am. It was frozen for a second. David Bowie, Rebel.
Rebel. Okay, yes. Rest in peace, David. Okay, next, Michelle, to you. Starburst or Skittles? This is a tricky one.
Starburst.
Chandra?
Starburst.
Love. Okay, and last question. We're still in quarantine. I know we're still in pandemic, but if you could teleport to anywhere, where would you go right now? Michelle, I'll start with you.
I would go to a beach in Zanzibar.
Oh, yes. Oh, that sounds great. Chandra?
I would go to Panama, the country, not Florida.
Yes, yes.
I was gonna say, not Panama Beach, not Panama City Beach.
Right. It's funny. I actually, I was in Panama for my birthday in March, and I came back 4 days before it was declared a pandemic here. So I would love to teleport there right with you as well, Chandra. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for joining and having some fun with Rapid Fire. That's all the time that we have today for this week's episode of Climate Curious. But I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been I feel like I learned so much. I know that somebody learned something. Michelle and Chandra, any last words from you? How can folks, support your organizations?
So, Partnership for Southern Equity, we're PS Equity Matters on Twitter, PS Equity on Facebook, and I think it's also PS Equity on Instagram. It's all the same. I'm at Chandra Farley on Twitter, so feel free to follow me there as well. And we have a really new, exciting student youth initiative that has been kicked off. Hashtag keep that same energy. So lots of media blitz we've got happening this week. So definitely check that out as well.
Love that. Yes. Thank you. And Michelle?
And just gratitude to be here today with Chandra. Thank you guys. Join us at groundswell.org. If you know folks in DC who can use $500 a year in free solar, please hit us up. We want to move those 28 spots. And we've got some great fun stuff going on this summer too, including a concert this Thursday that's going to feature Oceanator, talking about preparing for power and energy equity. So thank you guys for inviting me on today. I appreciate it.
Love that. Well, thanks you all so much. Next week, we're going to be having a hiatus and we'll have a repeat episode, but we'll be back for another episode the Tuesday after for Indigenous Power. Again, I'm Shawnee Watkins of Agency of Joy, and this is Climate Curious, presented by the Solutions Project. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, everyone, and don't forget to smile.
We're done with exploitation and extraction games, building a world apart from tragedy and pain. Come organize your home and your heart. Let's get together, create the future that we want. Move it with your heart. Create the future that we want.
It's like, it says